All right. So, good afternoon again. So, welcome to another fruitful discussion with Mrs. M. So, what we're going to discuss today is a continuation on our study on forensic chemistry and toxicology. So, in particular, we'll need to discuss as to what is physical evidence. And today we'll also discuss the golden rules in investigation and also blood. Okay. So what do you mean by physical evidence? I know that you do have already an idea because we've already touched this matter when we had our live discussion. But this is just an additional information to allow you to appreciate more what is a physical evidence. So this refers to any material, object introduced in a trial for the purpose of proving a fact issue based on its demonstrable characteristics. Okay. So our physical evidence can be classified according to una, physical nature. So physical nature, of course, we are referring to a solid, a liquid, and a gas. Example of physical evidence. Another type of examination to be conducted. With regards to the type of examination to be conducted, of course, it depends on the type of physical evidence that is presented. If it is a dangerous drug, if it is a blood, if it is a semen, if it is a paint, so on and so forth. Now, common physical evidence collected from the crime scene. So first, DNA. Another, body fluids. So what are examples of other body fluids? Of course, you do have your saliva. Okay. Impressions. What are examples of impressions? Like your foot impression, your shoe impressions, your fingerprint. Next, another is weapon. What are the possible examples of weapon? Knife, ice pick, gun, as to whatever type of weapon has been utilized to perpetrate or consummate the crime. Another is QD. Sa mga QD, it refers to your questioned document. So what are the possible examples of an evidence that will fall to question document? Like, for example, a suicide note. A suicide note is a good example of a questioned document. Another are miscellaneous trace evidence, meaning to say these are other possible pieces of physical evidence that might be collected at the crime scene that will help elucidate the crime itself. Okay, so what are the nature of evidence and its corresponding examination or branch of examination division? So if it is a fingerprint, of course, it is in our fingerprint division. If it is a firearm, firearm identification division. And if it is a trace evidence, like example, mga macro etching of vehicles, motorcycles. So this is on the physical identification division. If it is a document like a suicide note, um, uh, a counterfeit note. When you say counterfeit note, meaning to say this refers to your money that are not genuine, paper bill money that are not genuine, or pwede po katong mga affidavits. Okay, so these are examples of document that will be subjected in the QD division. Next is your psychoactive drugs and toxicology evidence. So this will be subjected or given forwarded to our chemistry division. Okay, so now let's focus on the various practices that must be observed in forensic chemistry. So first stage, collection or reception of specimen to be examined. When you say collection, meaning to say it is the act itself of collecting the pieces of evidence found at the crime scene. Pero collection and or reception are not the same. Kaya nga naman, collection again is done, okay? Okay, collection is done directly at the crime scene. When you say reception, it is where the collected evidence are turned over to the crime lab or crime laboratory for examination. Ganong kinahanglan man na ay the so-called reception? Because kinahanglan that there should be a data that these, for example, for instance, that these alleged dangerous drug recovered from the scene has been subjected for examination. Ibutang po diya ang time, the person or the officer who brought the collected evidence that must be subjected for the examination, the time, and the nature of physical evidence forwarded in the crime laboratory. Mao nang collection or reception. So what are the factors? So factors that must be considered when collecting, when collecting specimen for examination. Una is that you need to observe sufficiency of samples. When you say sufficiency of samples, kinahanglan, you need to get adequate number or adequate amount of specimen. Ngano kinahanglan adequate? Ngano dili man pwede nga gamay ra imong kwaon so that it would be easier on the part of the forensic chemist who will conduct an examination, scientific examination on the physical evidence that you have forwarded to the crime lab para easy sa iyang part that he can or she can perform several examinations. Muna kinahanglan, it should always be sufficient. Okay, just for in case the amount of physical evidence that will be forwarded for examination is gamay ra, it will not give an unlimited opportunity on the part of the forensic chemist to conduct examination, to conduct laboratory examination. Aside from sufficiency of sample, kani siya'y usa sa things that must be considered. Kani, standard for comparison. What do you mean by standard for comparison? Meaning to say, you need to have a basis. You need to have a standard so that you can determine that this, for example, if the physical evidence that has been forwarded at the crime scene is a suicide note, example lang, if it is a suicide note, it is imperative on the part of the investigator or on the part of the question document examiner to look for standard documents. Ano kinahanglan man na ay standard documents? Para naa siya basis to determine whether this suicide note is written by another person or by the same person. Muna kinahanglan na standard for comparison. Segunda ragot, actually standard of comparison is not only the word standard is not only utilized in the study of forensic chemistry and toxicology, but even in our daily activity and the way we look at gwapo and walay barog. Like for example, if para nimo ang gwapo is just like Vin Diesel, so if you will look at other men, you might say nga dili gwapo because imong standard or basis to say nga gwapo is pang Vin Diesel man. But if your standard is is not that high. So therefore, halos tanan ng makita might be considered as guwapo. Just like again, going back to the study of question document examination, if there is a suicide note, it is very important that you need to look for standards. So asa makamangitang standards? If the person who allegedly wrote that suicide note is already dead, asa mangita og standards? Katong sa iyahang mga document that has already been executed by him. So what are examples of document wherein you might get some standard samples of the specimen of his handwriting in order to obtain both the individual characteristic and the group characteristic of his handwriting. Una, if naa siya, if he is a student, di ka na yung mga notebook is considered as a standard. Okay, a standard specimen because it is known that it has been executed by that person. Another, if he or she has if he or she is a student, okay, so kato yung mga notebook or nag-OJT siya, so kato yung gimong mga narrative report, katong iyahang yang attendance, letters, all known document that has been executed by him are good examples of document that will be utilized for, again, standard for comparison purposes. Another, maintenance of individuality. Yes, this is very, very important. When you say maintenance of individuality, this simply means that each pieces of evidence that will be collected from the crime scene should be placed in a separate, appropriate container. Which means, nga dili sila pwedeng sagulon. Why is it that it is a really big NO in the collection of pieces evidence that it should be placed in separate and correct containers or envelopes para to avoid contamination, para to avoid friction. Remember that these pieces of evidence are very valuable in determining whether the person that has been arrested is really the primary suspect or dili. Collection of pieces of evidence are very important in order to free those people who are falsely accused. And of course, to give justice to the victim. Monang, you need to be very, very careful in the collection. It should always be placed in a separate container or envelope. Another, labeling and sealing. Yes, labeling and sealing is also very, very important. When you say labeling, meaning to say you will label there as to the type of physical evidence collected. Usa pa may laing sulod sa label. Kung kinsay ni kuha, usa pa may laing purpose of label as to what time it was collected. In labeling also, diha po na to makita, diha po na to ma-establish as to the number of people who have handled the evidence. That is the reason why natin gitawag nga chain of custody. Another is sealing. Next is, aside from the first stage, which is the collection or reception, next is actual examination. Next is the communication of the results of examination. The only person who is allowed to communicate and to give the result, of course, it is the forensic chemist who conducted the examination. Kinsa may iyang tagaan, kinsa iyang i-communicate, kinsa pwede makakuha og result. Of course, the head of the crime lab, kinsa pa may lain, the investigator, and the requesting parties. So all communication of the results of the examination will be in formal writing. So what are the 6 golden rules that must be observed? First, you need to go slowly. What does it mean? That if you are part of a SOCO team, if you are part of the investigating team, it is very imperative on your part to be to take things slowly in order for you to be able to identify as to what type of search method must be utilized. Remember, in responding to a crime scene, dili direct nga nag-conduct og search, but rather mag-conduct na sila og general observation as to what are the possible pieces of evidence that must be prioritized first, and also to identify as to what type of search, okay, method must be utilized. Remember nga dagan bitang mga searches method, so kinahanglan imo po na siyang i-base as to the location itself. If it is a room, if it is an indoor crime or an outdoor crime. Another is that you need to be very, very thorough. What does it mean? It is very important that you need to be very thorough para ma-avoid na to nga maka-overlook ta of possible pieces of evidence that will help prove the guilt, support in proving the guilt of the accused or primary suspect. Another is you need to take notes. Correct. No matter how smart you are, it's very important to take notes para to avoid the possibility nga naa kay malimtan. Next is you need to consult others. Though it is true that our investigators, our SOCO teams are already, investigating team are already knowledgeable in this area, but we cannot deny the fact that there are certain areas that they are not really well versed. Mo nang, the best way to do is to consult others who are an expert as well. Next is that you need to use your imagination. Then another is avoid complicated theories. So, I've already mentioned earlier about chain of custody. So, unsa man ang chain of custody again? Chain of custody refers to the number of people who have handled the evidence. So, what are the aims to establish? What are the aims to establish the chain of custody? Una, the date and the time at which the evidence was or were handled. Matanggisgot kanina. Those who had contact, meaning to say the number of people who handled the evidence. Oh, i-close na kay kaklase pa sama. And another is what are the changes, if ever there are any changes performed. Next is circumstances under which the evidence was or were handled. So, sequence of our chain of custody. Una, the scene. Next, the evidence. Next, yes langga. Next is the evidence collector, the forensic examiner, the custodian, court presentation. Let's court presentation. So, these are the sequence of the chain of custody. Oh, lagi. So now let's proceed to serology. Now let's proceed to our study of serology. So it is a scientific study of serum and other body fluids. So our blood has been called as a circulating tissue of the body. Alangan, ga-circulate yun ng blood. Okay? So it is referred to us as the highly complex mixture of cells, enzymes, proteins, and inorganic substances. So kani, since our blood is a circulating tissue, what are the components or characteristics? What are the sulod of our blood? So, these are the elements. 45%, okay, formed elements consisting the following. Una, RBC or the red blood cells. This contains the hemoglobin, okay, and carrying oxygen to the various cells in the body. And the appearance of our red blood cells under the microscope is circular, biconcave, disc, or rounded edges. Naroningon ba ni diri nga ato ang RBC or red blood cell is responsible in carrying oxygen into the various regions of our body because of the presence of hemoglobin. Maunang, if your hemoglobin is low, your heart will be forced to pump. Anong makinalang mamugos man og pump ang imuhang heart if your hemoglobin is very low para to make sure that all regions of our body matagaan og enough amount of oxygen. But there is a disadvantage. There is really a disadvantage if ever your hemoglobin is low. Kaya nga naman, in a long run, because your heart is not pumping too much in order to circulate the oxygen, ang mahitabo is that you might develop in the future heart enlargement. So another component na po, your white blood cells. So our white blood cells, same as our RBC, is also very important. Ano man, defends the body from invading microorganisms and helps fight infection. Next is part of the 45% is our platelet. Same with the RBC and your white blood cell, platelet plays a vital role also sa atuong blood. Kaya naman, it is responsible for clotting the blood. Kabantay mo anang mga samad mo. Or example, you are cooking, no? Not cooking. Pero naghiwa ka o lamas. Then suddenly, nahiwaan ang imuhong kamot. Okay. Magdugo, yes, natural. But then, pagkatuod-tuod ana, when you apply pressure, okay, pagtuto na, when you apply pressure, the bleeding stops. So, if muhunong o bleed after applying pressure, this clearly means that your platelet is really doing its job. So, unsa may buot pasabot? That if your platelet will not perform its job properly, if it will not clot, no? If it will not allow to, if it will not produce the proper clotting of blood, ang mahitabo is that bisag unsa kagamay ang imuhang samad, magpadayon ka na siya og dugo. And in turn, it will put your life into jeopardy. Kaya nga naman, possible loss of a lot of blood. And napoy mga tao nga naiingon na sakit. So munang, mostly of them nga naiingon na ng sakit is that dili na sila magtugay. Okay? Normally, naras mga 14 to 16 years old. Okay, next, let's proceed to plasma. So, ang plasma nato is a liquid portion of the blood. This is composed of about 55% of the total blood volume. So, to be exact, 90% is water, 10% is solid. How about our serum, guys? Our serum is a straw, yellowish liquid that can be seen when blood is allowed to clot. Example. Okay, so based on the given example, so this is the plasma itself. Kung sa gito itong i-discuss. Okay, our plasma is composed of, again, 55% of the total volume of the blood. So this is your blood cell. So your serum is equal to plasma minus the fibrogen. Another good example to have a better understanding. So as you can see in this side, okay, so the centrifugation done directly with the anticoagulants. So the clotting factors, okay, present are, example ano niya is the fibrinogen, they are given to patients lacking of blood. While your serum is a centrifugation done after coagulation without the anticoagulants. So unsa may absent ano niya? Serum is equal to plasma minus the clotting factor. This is usually used for diagnosis. Another good example. So ano sa ginato makita ng atong serum? Makita ng serum after the blood is allowed to clot. So in this case, this is the blood clot and this is the serum itself. Another more practical example. This is the blood clot and this is the serum. Okay, so let's continue. Okay. Now let's focus on the importance of blood. First, it's that it serves as a circumstantial or corroborative evidence against or in favor to the perpetrator. Ano pwede ba siyang in favor or against the perpetrator? Because if a blood is collected from the crime scene and the result says there that it does not match the victim, it does not match the detained suspect, therefore, he will be released. However, punta doon. Oh, mapapalit ko. Wala sa doon. Okay, however, it becomes against the perpetrator if the result is the opposite one, wherein mo match ang blood collected from the crime scene to the blood type of the perpetrator. Another importance of the blood is to resolve mga issues on parentage. Like for example, kani Gailuganay ang couples A and B and couple D and C if ilahon bang anak si C. So, the blood type, as you can see, diri ang blood group. So, the blood type of Mama A and Papa B, who happens to be a couple, is pareho silang O ang ilahang blood group. Dayon the second couple, si Mommy D and Papa E, okay, si Mama D is O, si Papa E is B. Usa may buot pa sa buot ana, mais-maiso na to. If both of the couples are O, therefore, ang ilang anak should be O. Pero, if any of the couple has a different blood type, so mugawas ko na siya. Like for example, in the case of D and E, so therefore, ang anak ni D and E, pwede ang blood type is O, pwede ang blood type is B. So therefore, based on the given example, usay buot pasabot. If si baby C, ang yang blood type is B, and looking at the blood type of the couples, therefore, si baby C is the child of Mama D and Papa E. Dili pwede nga mahimong anak si baby C ni Mama A and Papa B simply because it is too impossible for them to produce blood type B. Okay, because both of them are O. Next. Determination of the cause of death and the length of time the victim survived the attack. Okay, when you say determination of the cause of death, dili kay autopsy ha. Ang still part of the autopsy, pero kanabang the usual idea ninyo nga autopsy nga cause of death may siya by strangulation in ana dili in ana ha. What is referred here in the kaya our focus is blood man, so therefore our focus here is to determine as to pila na siya ka-oras na matay, pila na siya ka-oras na matay, pila ka adlaw na siya na matay, depending on the settlement of the blood and depending on the condition of the cadaver. Example, okay. So in this case, when the decomposition settles in, the cadaver or the body of the dead undergoes 3 stages. The livor mortis, okay, the rigor mortis, and the other one is the algor mortis. So the question is, what is the difference? What is the difference between the three? When you say livor mortis, meaning to say that it is the point at which the deceased person, okay, deceased person's body becomes very pale. Ngano mo pale man? Kaya dili naman mo circulate ang blood. Okay? So this is due to the loss of blood circulation as the heart stops beating. Okay. So sa giingon ni Goof, the blood begins to settle by gravity to the lowest portion of the body, causing the skin to become discolored. So this process may begin after an hour following the death and continue to develop until 9 to 12 hours of post-mortem. When you say, kanang gi-emphasize niya dili nga lowest portion of the body and his controlling gravity, meaning to say that our blood settles down. Therefore, kung asa nga portion of our body nga nakalay sa ground, dira mo settle ang atuon nga blood, resulting from the discoloration. That is the primary reason why in livor mortis, ya kung mo respond ka og sa ka crime scene niya, nag-livor mortis pa siya, as the investigator, okay, you will know if the subject or the cadaver has been moved or wala because of the discoloration. All right, let's have a visual example para mas masabtan. Saon man ina ako pagkuha. Pastilan. Ay, dito siya. Okay, mag-open taglain ka. Mag-lisod yun ko. Okay, nara. Alright. So, muna akong giingon ninyo ganina. Okay? So, usay itong explanation that mahimong palang body of the cadaver because of the loss of circulation. Kaya mo stop na magbita ang heart mo na di naka-circulate. So sa patigingong ganina, because of the pull of gravity ang mahitabo, the blood settles down to the portion of the body that has been nasa ground itself. Like for example, kaning example, nganong naam ni siyahang likod ning discoloration. So kaning discoloration na refers to the settling of blood. Nganong naaman ni siya sa likod. Okay? Naani siya sa likod, buot pasabot ana nga kani siya namatay nga ang position is ang yang likod na sa ground. Just like this one. Another good example. Kani. Why is it that the discoloration is found sa breast sa babae? It only means nga ang babae is naka, gusto may Bisayaan ni? Ang iyahang the breast part is mo'y naa duol sa ground, resulting to the pool of resulting to the settling of blood because of the pull of gravity. Another good example. Ayaw na kayo mukuan ang kuan ng hangin. Pag na. Okay. Okay, kani. Nganong kaning bata nga namatay, the discoloration is naa sa side sa iyang face and naa sa side sa iyang bukton. And for sure, tapos kilid sa iyang body. Simply because ang bata namatay, ang iyang position is gata kilid. Another example, bata again. So in this case, the rigor mortis, bapa man na rigor mortis. Open siya na or livor mortis. Okay, another good example. So again because of the pull of gravity. So kung unsa iyang position, like for example, kung ang iyang nagpungko siya, namatay, so therefore, ang iyang blood, okay, the discoloration are most likely found sa iyang tiil dapit. Kung asa dapit ang mas tuol sa ground. Okay? So these are examples of a livor mortis. Okay, another. Unsa pa may nanggingon dire? When we say rigor mortis, the body becomes stiff. Kanang nanggingon nga mugahi. And completely impliable, as all the muscle tense due to changes that occur in them at a cellular level. Therefore, our rigor mortis settles in at 2 to 6 hours after ka mamatay and can last up to 24 hours to 84 hours. Okay? Mo nang kung naay mamatayin yung loved ones, may silang anigahin na because of the rigor mortis. So after this, the muscle becomes limp and pliable once more. Sabot pasabot that after 24 or 84 hours, mubalik na Japon og kahumok ang lawas. Next, another early process is the rigor mortis, which occurs when the body goes cold as it ceases to regulate the internal temperature. How cold the body, of course, will largely depend on the temperature of the environment, which it naturally matches within the period about 18 to 20 hours after death. Okay? So those are the 3 levels of decomposition. So asa man mosulod ang atuang blood dara sa atuang livor mortis. Okay, next. Determination of the direction of escape of the victim or the assailant or perpetrator. Yes, of course. Kaya kung madugmagan ka, therefore magtulo-tulo na. So it will help you identify kung asa siya nga area ni iskapo. Next, determination of the origin of the flow of blood. Yes, that is correct. Next, determination of the approximate time the crime was committed. Most especially if it is still on livor mortis. Pero there are ways in order to determine, but still na ay mga challenges in the study of blood. Una, where blood has to be searched, and also for the collection, preservation, transportation of specimen of suspected to contain blood. Another challenges brought in the study of blood is, does the stain contain blood or another substance? So these are the common challenges or problem being faced. So now I'll present to you the chronological order in testing whether it is a blood or not, if it is a blood of a human or a blood of an animal. If it is a blood of a human, unsa man siya nga blood? Is it A, B, AB, or O? If it is if it is an A, unsa man siya, ni-match ba siya sa perpetrator or sa victim or wala? All right. So when you say preliminary test, or also known as the presumptive test or color test, it is a positive result. However, it is not that conclusive that a stain is blood. But a negative result is already conclusive that it is not a blood. Usa may reason, ana, because there are other substance that also reacts positively. Like anang mga sputum na to, mga luha na to, mga nasal secretion, juices, and even formalins reacts to the preliminary test. So mo ni siya giingon that if the result of the preliminary is negative, therefore it's not really a blood. But if it's positive, it's not yet sure if it's really a blood. So, kanunin ana man na, because we do have many types of preliminary tests. So these are some of the examples na pwedeng buhaton as a preliminary test or presumptive test or color test. Una, you can do benzene test. So, ang benzene test nato is a solution, benzene solution with hydrogen peroxide or agua oxinada. So, how are we going to know if it is a positive? If it will give you a color blue, therefore, it is a positive result. Next, the Van Dien's test. So still, it has agua oxinada, and if it will provide or if it will indicate a blue color, therefore it is a positive result. Mo nang reason ang preliminary test is also known as color test because it is based on the color itself. Another is the phenolphthalein test. So as you can see, na phenolphthalein reagent na japoy agua oxinada. So a positive result is red, pink. Another is leucomalachite green test. So of course, with leucomalachite green reagent plus hydrogen peroxide Japon, or commonly known as agua oxinada. The positive reaction will produce malachite green with a bluish green or pwede po peacock blue color. Another is hemastic test. So, kani siya, this is designed just like kuan magkuha ka o pregnancy mag-test ka if you are pregnant or not nga imong i-dip sa urine. So, same procedure gyapon siya. So, it is designed as a urine dipstick test for blood. So, the strip can be moist with distilled water and then placed in contact with the blood stain. So, if the color is green, therefore it is a positive indicator. Another is luminal test. Its reaction with blood results, of course, in the production of light rather than the color. So as you can see, gikan sa hemastic, papunta sa benzene, all of these are based in the production of color. But again, luminal is not based on color, but rather on the production of light. So by spraying luminal reagent onto a suspect item, large areas can be quickly screened for the presence of blood stain. So, after conducting a preliminary test, just for in case the result is positive, then you can proceed to the confirmatory test. But if the result is negative, then there is no need for you to conduct a confirmatory test. So assuming that we have conducted a benzene test, which provided us with a blue positive color, therefore, mo proceed ta o confirmatory test. So when you say confirmatory, meaning to say this is the actual proof that a stain is a blood. So therefore, it is already a conclusive result. So there are 3 confirmatory tests that may be employed. So the 3 common confirmatory tests, una, ang Checkman, sunod Takayama, and the Wagenhard test. So all of these are designed to show the presence of hemoglobin in a suspected blood by the presence of a specific crystal formation. So with the Techman, the result under the microscope is dark brown rubic crystal arranged singly or cluster. If it is a Takayama test, ang result niya, positive result niya, or confirmatory result niya is large rhombic crystals of salmon pink color arranged in clusters. While if it is a Wagenhard test, small dark circular crystals. Ang sunod din pangutana, is the stain of blood belongs to a human or belongs to an animal? So the only way to determine kung sa tao ba na or sa animal ba na is to conduct a precipitin test. So how do you identify if it is a human or an animal? Simple ra. The formation of a gray precipitation ring at the interface of two layers within 20 minutes indicates that it is a human blood. If there is no precipitation within 20 minutes, it is not a blood of a human being, but rather of an animal. Okay, so this is a sample result of a precipitation. So if the stain is of human blood, did it come from the victim or from the accused or from another person? Mo nang kinahanglan natong i-match by identifying the blood type. So this was explained on the basis that the red blood cells contain an antigen or agglutinogen, and that the serum contains the antibodies or agglutinin. So what are you going to do with that? So, in order to identify if it is A, nga blood type, kinahanglan, the agglutinogen that you will use is B. If it is a B agglutinogen in RCBC, dapat your serum agglutinin should be anti-A. So as you can see, it should be opposite in order to identify if it is if it is type A or type B. However, just for in case ang blood type niya is AB, meaning to say, ang present nga agglutinogen is both the A and the B. And wala siya'y agglutinin. Kung O siya, wala siya'y agglutinogen. Pero, pwede namang gamiton either anti-A and anti-B. Mo ba yan ay rason nga nung ang O is considered as a universal blood. All right, so that's it for this evening. So I'll see you tomorrow. So please make sure to study. Do not forget to write your insights. Okay, assignment, isulat na to.
Can you see me? Look at my window. Look at me. Can you see me my face or no? Can you see my face or no?
All right. So for your assignment, write your insights in today's discussion. Second, name at least 5 crimes that normally involves blood as a physical evidence. Okay. All right. So please do not forget to write your assignment, okay, directly in the channel, or you may provide your assignment. You may write your assignment on the commentary section of our Google Classroom. All right. Bye, guys.
No, no, no.